Hey everyone, welcome back to another Adobe Live. I'm your host, Fabiola Lara. Today on the stream, we're joined by motion designer Evan Abrams. So excited to be learning from you today, Evan. Are you pumped to be here?
Oh, I'm always pumped to be here. It's always a good time.
Yes.
Always nice to be, streaming it to good people here on Adobe Live. Yeah, last time you and I were together on here, the roles were reversed. So
I know it's so special for me today to be learning from you.
yeah, now I'm in the hot seat. I need to perform. So
Exactly. Everyone on the chat, bring your questions in so we can keep throwing all the questions at Evan today while he's trying to teach us. So today, Evan's going to be showing us how to create abstract looping videos. So stick around. But before we get started, if you missed the previous stream, you can view the replay on Behance or YouTube. That's up to you. Plus, check out the Illustrator Creative Challenges with Cloudy from Print My Soul every weekday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, right before the stream. Tune in, challenge yourself with a new prompt each day. And remember, friends, you can always catch the replays of these live streams, even when we're offline. So go ahead and bookmark this page so you can come back to it whenever you need a little refresh. Now, Evan, I'm taking a look at the chat. We have Stony, we have Rick Adams, Afroja, Anika. Oh my gosh, so many amazing people here for you today, Evan. Why don't you kick this off and introduce yourself? Tell us what we have planned today.
What are we doing here? We're gonna be sticking entirely in After Effects today. So we're going to be producing some fairly abstract kind of looping things. We're gonna be leveraging some tools in After Effects that people may not touch a lot. So we're going to be looking at some of the 3D, more MoGraphy elements where we can actually extrude things in 3D. We can do some really interesting lighting ideas, lighting and shading stuff, which I don't think people really think of After Effects as a place where we do 3D things, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting and hopefully kind of expands people's boundaries. And I would urge people, if they have questions about what you're seeing, get at us in the chat, because I know it can be kind of a heady subject. So we'll take a pause, we'll revisit some stuff. But if you can throw up what's on my screen, I can give you a little preview of where we're going with this. Here's if people follow me on Twitter at EC Abrams, you would have seen something like this already jump into your timeline. But we're going to be kind of extruding some stuff and pushing it around and working with keyframes, a lot of graph editor stuff, a lot of little cheeky transitions. So it all feels very continuous, but of special attention today. I want to pay special attention to the kind of lighting and shading scenario that produces this nice sort of soft and varied look on stuff. And the thing that's causing that is what's called an environment layer. So if I turn that environment layer off, there's nothing out here.
Oh
right?
My gosh. It's
right?
All that.
Yeah.
That layer holds all of that.
And so what's really going on here is this is reflecting an environment that's around it. So imagine if these are all like perfect mirrors and we've just put it inside an invisible sphere, like a sphere that goes all the way around it. The universe, right, is this layer, and it's nothing more spectacular than a gradient.
Wow.
And that's it. And it is this layer here that we actually have the ability to rotate it around. So if we wanted to change the lighting situation, it's just as easy as rotating the environment that's reflected in this geometry. So we're going to be
You're already blowing my mind. There's so many concepts happening that we're going to have to learn. You guys come with me. We're all learning together. This seems really intense, but I know that you're going to break it down and make it seem so easy. Like I could do it right now while I'm watching, except I'm doing this.
Follow along at home, folks, if you can.
Yes.
But yeah, any other housekeeping before we dive in?
No, that's everything. We're ready to jump right in, learn from you, and start showing us what we're doing here in After Effects.
So, step one, I want to kind of break the concept down a little bit. And for that, I have this wonderful sketch that I prepared on an airplane. So we can enjoy.
I like it.
Getting out my notebook, drawing crudely. You can see why I work in digital mediums as soon as you look at my sketchbook.
But I like it. I feel like sometimes when I jump into After Effects, I don't have the motion already planned out, and that really creates chaos for my workflow. And to see that you're starting with the sketch, even for motion, I think is a little groundbreaking for me.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't need to be super advanced, right? Like this is the idea of, okay, we're going to go from like a circle, we're going to tilt it and squash it, then we're going to stretch it out, then we're going to create like this atomic burst outwards, and then maybe that atomic burst kind of ends at its nubs, right, at its various terminus. So that might be something we do. So that's kind of one idea, 5 pictures. It communicates to me in the future that this is what I'd like to do. And then when I'm confronted by all the bells and whistles, all the dials and stuff, right, I'm going towards something instead of kind of just,
right, you have like a very fixed objective. You're like, visually I know what I'm trying to accomplish, as opposed to just like moving levers around and seeing what happens.
Exactly. And like sometimes it's fun to play in those ways, but generally it can be much more productive if you have these milestones that you want to try to get to, right? And it's very different from kind of illustrating and drawing and painting, right? Because that kind of builds up in layers, right? You got your sketch, and then it's getting more refined. It's becoming more of the final thing as we go. We almost need to know where we're going before we leave the house. So
and then figure out the mechanics, but you already know visually where each keyframe essentially is.
Yeah, the big beats at least, right?
Yes,
so we'll be able to get there, and then we're just solving problems to get between them, right? And we can start to really search for like, okay, how would I get from here to there? So for example,
you're going to show us how to do that without getting super frustrated.
Now, frustration I cannot solve, but I can at least.
I think you can. I think you're going to make this look seamless.
That's true. And then, so just to kind of compare and contrast, right? This idea lends itself to think already in my mind. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to need some solids. This is going to be made up of fills. Therefore, I'm just going to make a circle and extrude it, and then play with the extrusion depth and the circle size, and that will produce this. Whereas if I confront this one, I already know that I want to have a circle. Circle becomes like a donut. Donut kind of tilts and turns around, and then we are going to have it kind of right off, like it's going to sweep away, right? Which tells me I need to think of the mechanism that's going to do the sweeping already. So that might mean we're going to use trim paths. That might mean we're going to use some kind of masking in the shape layer itself to do this. But we want to be thinking and planning at this stage, rejecting ideas that probably won't work, and focusing on the tools that are going to get us there. So let's now, I think that gives us a good plan, right? We're gonna make some stuff, we're gonna extrude it, we're gonna wipe the stuff on and off. Let's examine, I think, just a bare bones version of this. Let's do the simplest version and then do the hard version, right?
Right.
We would often call this kind of like a proof of concept, or this is sort of like our style frame that we want to get the look. So we've got our plan of how it's going to move. Now we need the plan of how it's going to look, and then the two are just going to smash together in the middle.
Yes, we need to build that framework out essentially to make sure that it functions.
That's right. So let's just call this like testing ground or something, right? And let's work in like a 1080 by 1080, 30 frames a second to give us that smooth motion when it's out on social. I like working in square things because I'm a bit of a square, but I like things that are very symmetrical and that bring our focus into the center.
Okay.
And when it comes to sort of vertical stuff, with square, we can almost kind of make it bigger because the focus is always still in the center, right? If we were to work horizontally, we can tip it on its edge maybe, but let's try to keep it nice and even with a nice square composition. And let's give ourselves like 30 seconds of time. We can always have less time. If people aren't familiar with After Effects, just take my word for it. It's easier to shrink a composition than it is to grow it. And that is just because we can use our work area to make that happen. Now, two other things while we're setting this up. Under 3D renderer, because we are going to be working in 3D, we are going to be making use of what's called the Cinema 4D renderer. Cinema 4D is a product from Maxon, and you're in luck because there's already a Cinema 4D Lite that has been installed on your machine if you're using newer versions of After Effects. But the Cinema 4D renderer, for those out there who've perhaps not ticked this box or gone into this area, is just a different way of thinking about 3D stuff. So After Effects is gonna tilt its thinking from classic mode to Cinema 4D mode, and this will warn us right up top. You know, here are things that have been enabled: extruding and beveling, curved footage layers, material overrides, and what has been disabled is a big list of things, right?
Nice.
So blend modes out, track mats out.
Keeping only the essential.
That's right. Only what we need specifically. So that's the option that we want because we specifically want extrudes and bevels. So we hit OK.
Sweet.
And we've entered the zone. Let's start with something, just a really simple proof of concept. We are just going to use some text, and we're going to rate Fab because we're here with Fabiola today. So.
Let's do it. I'm already very excited.
The trick is to work people's names into the show.
Into all of your projects.
That's
when
right.
You're an animator.
Yeah. This becomes a fan cast pretty quickly. But we're looking right now at a transparent background, right? We got our transparent space. We want to first work out this environmental layer thing. So we are going to make the layer 3D. So the text has become 3D. We know this because we've turned on the switch, and now the little gizmo is active. So I can rotate this thing in the various axes that we would like. And if we twirl open, we now have the geometry and material options that are available to us. I'm going to go geometry options, and we're going to go to extrusion depth, and there we go.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. That looks great.
We nailed it. We're crushing it already. But this is a true extrude, meaning this geometry exists. So even if we tilt it all the way up, we see the walls of the geometry.
Okay.
And right now we don't see any like texture to it, right? Like it's just
flat.
white. Yeah, it's nothing, right? So we need to put like a new light in the scene. So let's do that. So we're going to just drop a light in the scene. This is a point light. Point light, you can think of it like just a light bulb hanging infinitely in the world, casting light in every direction. Boom, like a tiny sun out there in the world, right? And now the first question, of course, would be, what are we seeing here? Well, if you look at that, we now know it's three-dimensional because the light is being cast, it's hitting the different faces. We've nailed it. Problem one, we have extrudes, and we can see that they're extrudes. Perfect.
You made that look very easy, and we already have something basic. I mean, you could stop here, but I recommend you don't, and you continue to watch this stream.
That's right.
See the real magic happen.
We've hit. If this is as far as you need to go, congratulations.
Congratulations, you've made it.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do, when this thing extrudes, right, you see it pushes backwards from the face. That's not particularly helpful for me because I envision things when I extrude them away from the center. And this is just a little bugaboo of control for me, that if I extrude stuff, I would love for it to come away from the center, and it should be a good like even push out on either side, or else this here is what we call our anchor point. And right now, if I were to rotate this, it rotates around the face. So if we wanted to like, tumble this thing around, we have to move this, right? So I'm going to call up the anchor point, and today you're also going to be confronted with some expressions. So I lied in the beginning. We're also going to confront you with code. Don't worry, there's not too much of it.
Just follow along carefully.
That's right. Copy and paste.
Yes.
So I'm going to take this little pick whip over here, this little curly cue next to anchor point. We're going to drag this down to extrusion depth. And when you can see the little box around it, and kabam, it's already changed the values. See, they've gone red, and it's moved our anchor point away. Twirl into the anchor point. We're going to see, I've made my font very big so that we can see what's going on.
You're thinking ahead. Yes. Okay. I see that. That looks very intimidating. Please tell me how we resolve this.
All right.
So it's not red anymore.
That's red is what we want, right? Red means an expression is overriding this property. So we can just,
so that's a good sign.
That's right. We don't want to pass judgment on the colors. We want to just accept the colors and what they're telling us. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just red. Okay.
Got it.
So we're going to type
neutral.
in. That's right. We're going to type VAR at the start. This is mostly for our edification. just so that we know that this is a variable named temp, which is equal to, which is what we're seeing here, is equal to geometry option dot extrusion depth. So this is like an address. Think of this as like, where is this information filed? And if we were to look at the layer, some of the hidden properties, we would know geometry option dot extrusion depth. That is the place we are going. The dot here is just like an IP address that it is like more specifically. So we're here, but more specifically, we're in this. So we're getting deeper in. And then we're just going temp, temp, temp. So we're just repeating this variable over and over again. And you can see there's extrusion depth at 108. And here are these values at 108, 108, 108.
Perfect.
Right? So if we wanted to control this, step one, along the Z axis, what I would like is actually the extrusion depth divided by 2, right? Which will put this, hopefully, right in the middle center of this thing. And for these others, I'm actually going to set those at 0. So let's set those at 0 for now. We may end up changing that. But now, if you look when I rotate it, see that anchor point is living, right? It's at least in the Z in the center, right? Now, we need to kind of adjust this up and down a few points to get it right into the space. And so what we can do is we can actually just take the values that we've written in there. So I'm going to write value 0, and we are going to take value 1. Now this gives us a little manual control here, a little manual control there. We're not going to need to do that for shape layers because they organize themselves differently, but this gives us the control of the thing. But now look, we can tumble it around however we like.
It's like fixed in the center of the fab object.
Exactly. We're crushing it. I'm going to really quickly, we know that we're going to have a lot of like tumbling going on in this thing. So let's keyframe the rotation axes here, and let's roll ahead in time, and let's do like 1 spin along this axis so that we are spinning around.
Yes. That looks fun.
Yeah. And we're going to go maybe 1 on this other axis. So now we're just going to be tumbling slowly in space like this, over and over and over again like that. Just
like floating in space.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Feel the joys of 0 Gs.
Exactly.
And we're gonna give us like 15 seconds of this. So we get a slow tumble, but we can still observe it. And this will give us, hopefully, the different faces reflecting our environment. So, hey, and we got other celebrity, Kyle Hamrick, in the chat with us today.
Yes, we have so many Adobe celebs in the chat. Non-Adobe celebs, everyone is a celeb in this stream. I decided true. Just now. That's
right. Well, I say Kyle is because he and I also record a podcast together.
Yes, I love
so I
it.
have to. It's
shout out.
Although I've not been editing a lot of episodes, so I'm just gonna roast myself for that one while I'm here. So other features that we might want to do in the 3D, right? We are going to have a look at the other geometry options while we're in here. We have a bevel depth, and the bevel style currently is none. Let's set that to angle, and now you can see we've got a cool little chiseled angle on it, right?
Accent there, yes.
Yeah. What's really useful about these things, at least when we're thinking about 3D stuff, is they tend to catch light and provide definition, which is exactly what we want. So we could do a concave kind of thing, like a little scalloped edge. We could do a convex edge. And I like just a little soupçon of convex around the outside, just to round us off a little bit. And you can see when light hits
it's friendlier that way.
Exactly. We want friendly letters. Mm-hmm. So you can see when the light hits it, right? This is dark, but this gives us a nice bias of light in between. So if you're thinking, Evan, why do I want to bevel these edges? Well, this is
it gives you a little highlight. Yes, I like it.
Yeah. And Cam's saying, how do we make the text 3D? There's a little 3D toggle right here. This little bad boy right here on the layer, in case people are missing it. This is our make.
Yes.
And critically, if people are joining late, make sure you're in the Cinema 4D renderer, and that we've gone into the geometry options and given it a little extrude. So that's our recap so far of where we're at. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we want to talk about the environment layers. We got to talk about the environment, and it's because it's Oceans Week also. So just heads up.
Oh my gosh, a lot going on here.
That's right. So what we need for an environment is an equirectangular projection. How about that for some words, folks?
Simple, easy. That seems no-brainer. I knew that.
Now, equirectangular projection, it just means an image that is twice as long as it is tall.
Okay.
Such as this. This is an equirectangular projection of our Earth, for example. Grab this off of nasa.gov. So, in fact, I recommend everybody do that. If a client ever approaches you and you need to have a map of the Earth, please get the ones off of NASA, because they're at least going to be accurate to the shape of the Earth. So,
yeah, which is a very controversial topic.
I guess so. Well, I suppose it's controversial in a few ways, right?
Yes.
One, debating the base geometry, but one that I think is maybe more important to consider. Every sidebar, every map is a representation of importance. So what roads do you include? What roads do you exclude? What place names do you put? What place names do you not put? When we come to representations of the Earth, most of us are probably familiar with the Mercator projection, which overemphasizes the northern hemisphere by literally distorting it to be large. Now, that's probably because the people in Europe and North America happen to think that that is very important, but is not particularly useful if you, say, wanted to traverse Africa here, and you wanted to know the actual perimeter you would have to sail versus the perimeter of Spain. Not helpful to use a sort of massive expansion.
It's totally out of proportion, yeah.
Exactly, right. So, like, for example, you can fit multiple Canadas into all of Africa, something that does not appear to be the case when you use the Mercator projection. Anyway, for our purposes, we want an equirectangular thing, because it's one of the projections that makes sense when it's going to be wrapped around a sphere. If anyone's done 360-degree stuff, like 360 video, you're familiar with many different types of projections that are coming at you. This is one of the simplest ones.
This is all starting to click. I can see exactly what you're putting together here for us, and I appreciate it.
I want to take people by the hand one step at a time.
For real, I'm serious. I feel like things are just clicking for me, and I'm ready for it to all look beautiful now into this abstract loopable GIF.
Perfect.
Or video
so
for now.
We're working equirectangularly. Therefore, let's make a composition that is 2,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, right? Twice as wide as it is tall. This will contain whatever we want to put in it. And we're just going to call this I'm going to write ENV because I don't want to test my spelling live on air. And
fair.
We're going to hit OK. So now we have this box that is here to contain things. And if we wanted it to be the Earth, we'll drop the Earth in. Let's right click on it, go transform, and we will fit to comp width. Plunk. There we go. We're already scaled to the exact size. No oopsies around the edge. So let us now return to our testing ground, bring in our env. Our env goes in the back. Now this will become three-dimensional. Clunk. Now already it looks very wrong. This is fine.
Yes, it looks like I would panic at this point.
Well, that's one of the dangers of working in compositing softwares and stuff. There's like a period of like danger, oh bad, click, oh, there we are. So
yes.
And that click in this case is just right clicking on the layer and going up to environmental layer. All
right, perfect.
Now it has been turned into the invisible environment that surrounds, permeates, moves through us, right? It's gone from somewhere to everywhere, and oh no, After Effects is going to give you an angry thing. Don't worry, we'll be
with you. It's okay.
That's okay. We'll be back up in just a moment.
Give it a second to comprehend what's going on, and soon everything will be just fine. We'll continue with our environment. I'm sure it'll be great.
But in the meantime, I'm going to have to probably force quit, I think, and then we'll come back.
It happens from time to time, you guys. If you're just tuning in here, we're here with Evan Abrams as he's showing us how to create abstract looping video. We've gone from sketch to 3D text because we're using kind of a sample fab text. And now we just started with the environment. Am I right?
That's right. Now, I can't get the error message to go away. It keeps confounding me with more errors. So we're going to find out if we can just boot that bad boy right up.
That's what I was going to suggest. Yes, Kyle, I think he did just blow After Effects' mind. And
Could have
handle all
been.
that wisdom. Okay, we're back.
But yeah, we're gonna see.
So it seems.
Things are loading up.
All right.
Okay. So we're back in here. And okay, now it has
and we're not feeling defeated at all.
No. These hiccups are part of the process. If we anticipate these things, then we know they're going to happen. So it's all good. So we need to get fab reflecting the environment, right? So we're going to twirl open. And the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go under Cinema 4D renderer options. I'm going to dial this down. I'm going to dial this down into draft town. So this is like how much we're asking of the machine to do, right? If we put it up at extreme, then
it'll freak out maybe a little bit.
Exactly. We don't want freakouts. We want to keep it chill.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. And we gotta keep it saving. Always get our reminder to save.
Yes. Don't make that mistake, you guys. Always be saving.
So here in the material options is where we're going to find the reflection intensity. I'm going to put that up to 100. And when you look at this, I think we can see a little bit of the continents being reflected in our thing.
Yes,
right?
I see it. It looks lovely, like a little fab Earth universe.
That's right. So if we tilt this thing around, we're getting the light reflected in it, and we're getting the Earth kind of reflected and stretched and skewed out around the edges, right? And we know this is true because if I come into the environment and we replace this with the moon, perhaps. Ooh, here's an equirectangular projection of the moon.
Another NASA image, am I right?
That's right.
Perfect.
Your tax dollars hard at work providing imagery for us to
stream.
Yeah. So then we go back to the testing ground, and would you look at that? There's the moon reflected in it as well.
Beautiful, dreamy.
Yeah. And if people are wondering like, oh, what other cool equirectangular things could I get? If you look up something called HDRI type shots, these are usually spherical environments used a lot for 3D rendering, where we get like a real environment that's around us in a scene, and it's just being kind of beamed in. It's a very easy way to get kind of realistic lighting of stuff. So imagine you just took 360-degree shot of the room you're in, right? Then all of the bright places in that room, they're like light sources that are really coming in to where you're at. So if you were doing visual effects work, for example, you want to place objects on a desk, have the lighting appear or be reflected in that object that's on the desk, you probably will want a spherical image of the world that will be reflected in that object. So it's a little practical tips for people.
Yes, some practical application to use out in the world. And what would happen if you were to just drop a image that isn't spherical? Right. It's just like let's say a photo that fits in those dimensions.
Yeah. So let's see.
Would the whole thing just look chaotic?
So what would happen? It's supposed to be a sphere. So if the two edges don't meet up correctly, you get a big seam that's running down it. Now
through the whole object then, right?
Exactly. Well, at least along one cut, right? One just where it stitches the sphere back together. And the issue with that, it won't show up all the time, obviously. If we were in this case to just put the seam facing away from us, and in fact, I don't know why I'm speaking hypothetically, we can simply create a new solid in this space, make it the comp size, and we will deploy onto this a ramp. So we put a gradient ramp onto this thing, and we're going to set the ramp not going north-south, but east-west like this. So if we were to wrap this around something, logically, there should be a seam where the black edge hits the white edge, we would think. Now, that's not going to be particularly fun for us to look at. So let's do some nice After Effects-y colors in here.
Yeah, something that's a little more dramatic than just black and white.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it on brand here. So we've got these things, right? And we're going to go back to the testing ground. And look at this, a brilliant environment around us. And unless we are actually facing the seam, we're not going to see it. However, there it is.
There it is. Okay. And in our case, you're going to be having it do all sorts of spinning and motion. So it would reveal itself, the seam.
Most likely. Now we could, right? We could take this object and just rotate that seam away from us. So if we just take that and we rotate it 180 degrees, the seam will always be behind the object and therefore should never be reflected back into the camera. right?
Okay.
Or we could just not take that risk and go ahead and produce something.
Save yourself the trouble and do something that is,
Yeah.
what's the precise word?
Oh, I don't know. I was going to say no
the
drama.
name of the type of image that you mentioned it earlier.
Sorry, equirectangular.
There we go. Get something equirectangular.
Yeah, and the real thing is we just want when we know how it's going to be stitched together, so we just want that edge to match this other edge. What's going to happen at the poles at the north-south of this is, a big blue dot and a big pink dot at the other ones, right? So that
works.
It's and it's going to just look like a nice soft gradient in between. So when we return back to the testing ground, we see this thing kind of tilting, turning around. It's having this nice soft light that it can reflect all around.
Glowing.
Yeah, exactly.
From the inside out.
The other thing that we run into, though, is especially if things have voids, is the shape trying to reflect itself perfectly. So we probably want to avoid any shapes that have a lot of thing reflecting itself. So we'll probably just avoid that for now.
So you're saying the word fab doesn't work great in this instance?
In this case, no, unfortunately.
It's reflecting itself. And probably most letters.
Yeah, unless they're like an L.
L, yeah.
The wonderful.
Maybe just an L, just one L, or maybe an I.
Yeah, exactly.
That would work great.
Or you know what? Maybe an F will be fine. Let's do that.
No,
you can see that it does catch itself a little bit. But if you go into this thing here and we twirl into, we need to go into the F, and we're going to go into its material options. You can see things like, does it cast shadows? Yes or no? Does it accept shadows? Yes or no? So if we say yes, cast some shadows, we can actually get the F to like cast shadows of its various parts onto itself, which can be kind of useful as it tumbles around. Another thing that you may have to do fairly frequently is you may have to go up to edit, purge, and we're going to purge out our memory and disk cache. And this is all of the frames that are kind of just being cached and sort of preloaded for us, so that they can kind of cram up your buffers, because we are asking for a lot of lighting things to happen, light from this direction bouncing off of this way, and how does it look when it hits the camera? So just things are filling up in here. But in terms of testing out some more things, what do we need to do to prove to ourselves that this is going to look the way we want in the future? Well, I think we need to dial in some of this material. So we're going to go back to that big L here. And
I wanted to mention my last name is Lara, so the L is still perfectly in context here. No errors there. Everything is going smoothly.
Excellent. Good. We're covered. Covered all our bases.
In terms of initials, we've got it.
This is good. This will be a good little initialism you can drop on stuff.
Okay. So what are we doing here to fine tune this?
Right. So we want to work on our material. And if we can get this figured out in a small scale, it's going to be a lot easier when we go to apply this in the big scale. And I say that because check out this little button here, Draft 3D. We tap the little lightning bolt situation, and this sort of strips away a lot of the extemporaneous stuff just out here. So you notice the big difference when I click it on. No reflections are happening. We're seeing a bit of the lighting situation, but it's really simplified the scene, and it makes it render almost, I think pretty much in real time.
Yeah.
So that is the reason we would use the Draft 3D button. The other thing that's great about Draft 3D is you can toggle on like a ground plane, and you can see geometry that moves outside of this frame. These are fairly new features if people have not kind of interacted with those yet. Draft 3D is really good for trying to figure out our motion and then turn it off, and we figure out, the beauteous look that we want. So
cool. Okay, so that's like a little bit more bare bones version.
Exactly. And we really want to think about our lives in these sort of two modes. How does it move? How does it look? And then if your machine, for example, is really getting bogged down, be like, oh, it's so hard to evaluate each frame. Kick it into draft mode, figure out the motion, kick it into like final render version here. So we're like, this is this is good. So you have the confidence that it's going to move the way you want, it's going to look the way you want, and then you hit render and you step away from the computer for a little bit. Less these days, but I will be honest, this is a Mac Studio, running quite a bit of hardware into this thing. So, your use out there may vary. So just a heads up to people.
Right. We're setting the expectations really high here. Keep in mind, your machine is your machine.
Now, really, we've already had one crash, so it can't be that lofty.
Yeah, we kept it real in that way, right? Like
Exactly.
Every machine can crash and it happens. So
we're just like you.
Yes, but that's a really good tip though. That way, if you're getting frustrated, put it into
Mhm.
Draft 3D, figure out the motion, and then come back to, all the bells and whistles visually.
Exactly. The other thing that's great about Draft 3D is it's still preserving a lot of the lighting, and that's what you want when you're thinking about composition, is what's in light, what's in shadow. So, all right, materials. Speaking of, so we're going to use these various dials and sliders here to get the look we are after. So ambient is how much ambient light this thing's picking up. Diffuse, if we turn diffuse up and down, we'll see a little bit of change. But most of this thing is being shown to us through the intensity of its reflection. So with reflection intensity dialed all the way up, it's a total mirror. It's a complete mirror. The other thing that's causing it to look the way it looks is the actual color of the layer itself, which in this case is determined by the text color picker. If I were to dial this all the way back down to totally black, nothing to see here.
Then there's nothing. Okay.
Exactly. And the closer we get to white, the more of that reflection we're actually going to see. So something to be aware of. However, if you want to get a little weird with it, we can dial it over towards a color, right? So now it's more like a colored refraction is happening. So we can get like a
colored mirror or something reflecting its space.
And very normal things that totally
mirror.
exist.
I get
We're gonna leave it at totally white because that gives us the purest kind of bounce of the environment around us. And we might just dial that down a little bit here. The other thing is our reflection sharpness. If you bring this way down, look how crunchy it gets.
Oh, I kind of
gets real grainy. And this is because, the number of rays getting traced and such, it just gets, this is what happens to 3D stuff when you really dial back the quality. It gets grainy like mustard. So we're going to
a little lo-fi. Somebody could be after that look, right?
This is an aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
This is something. And I think what's really cool about it is it's usually we'd have to try to achieve this with effects. In this case, nope, it just is what it is. So
yeah, I'm kind of into it. I feel like that's an honest way to make something look lo-fi.
Oh yeah. And I would say you probably want to be somewhere in the middle, like around 50%, just because it does get very extreme and crackly here towards the end. But yeah, let's not go all the way crisp. Let's kind of bring that down a little bit. The other sliders that we have to work with here: specular intensity, specular shininess. So how shiny is this thing? So if we were to increase the intensity of this, the reflectance of light, meaning this light that's in the scene, you dial it way up, we're getting 100% of that bounce coming off, really hot highlights. Shininess is narrowing down, right? So we're going from like all of it to only some of it. Think of this kind of like your mattedness. So if the shininess is down at 0, right, this whole face is showing us that shine.
Glowing. Yeah.
And if we start to pinch it in very narrowly, it's only gonna be like bright hits, bounce, bounce, bounce coming off of stuff. So when you're dialing yours in, it's kind of a choice of like, how metallic do I want this to be? How like metal, how like plastic. And of course we have this metal slider here that I'm gonna level with you. I never totally know what this does. So
some things you just have to play around with the different levels and see if you like it.
Yeah.
It's down to personal taste.
Metal is the one that always confuses me. If anyone in the chat, knows what metal means in more precise terms, do let me know, because I'm always curious what the kind of official definition of. I'm sure
someone in the chat's going to come through with a very official definition. I'll let you know.
Perfect. So I'm pretty happy with what we've got here, right? Like the lighting bounce is nice and soft. It's like the sun is coming up.
Yeah.
As this rotates around. I think we're good to go with this thing as it is. We've tested it. It's only taken us 40 minutes to get this far, so we're good to go.
This is cool. I feel like we learned a lot in terms of all the different effects we can create with the object.
Perfect.
The material.
So we're going to go ahead. We are going to, we called this the testing ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to duplicate that. Testing ground 2. Oh no, this is for real this time. That's what we're going to call this one.
Legit. Okay.
So we're
showtime.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to come into this thing and we're not going to use letters. We could if we wanted to, but let's use some shape layers. Let's get abstract in here.
All right, Evan. We have a definition of the metal.
Okay.
I haven't verified it myself, but it's what's coming through the chat here. Scott McMahon says metal. It's the fractal noise of 3D.
Scott is a regular over on the E.C. Abrams Behance shows that go on Friday and Saturday. And I think he might be having some fun with us today.
I agree.
Fractal noise, folks, is the mirepoix of all After Effectsing. It is the base that informs all other things. Oh, it's yeah. If
I think you're right. I'm going with it.
For those who enjoy these cooking analogies.
Yes.
Okay, so we need to replace this with a shape layer. So let's go ahead. If we reconsult the notebook, we're going to go with that lovely donut version that we were looking at. We've already done the tube version. We've seen it, and we can explore that if we want. But let's do something original. Let's do something neat. So we are going to create a circle. Ooh, awesome!
Beautiful, perfect.
It's symmetry.
The most pleasant of shapes.
Ultimate shape.
The
circle.
ultimate shape. Yep. Oh, you made that. Stroke. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we only have the most controversial takes on here. So circle is best shape. Hot dog is not sandwich. Okay, so we're taking our shape layer and I'm just dialing in that I want a stroke but no fill. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it 3-dimensional. Now these two things are intersecting with each other because the two geometries are smashing right over top of each other. And what we want to do is come into here. We're going to look at its sort of anchor point thing that we dialed in. We did it perfectly the first time, so why not just copy it and paste it over here? So we go ahead and paste that. We have some fun options in here that are going to help us out. So we can actually dial this back to 0, 0, and this is going to live in the middle center. If we were to extrude this, let's give it a little extrudo, and it's getting pushed back, we can tell, but it's also getting pushed forward because that thing is living in the center. So I'm going to stop looking at the L here for a minute, and we can just enjoy this interesting donut. Circle. Yeah. And we are now going to come into here and we want to address the material options. So we tap A twice, tap, copy material options, go to this layer, paste material options. And would you look at that? We have now replicated the thing, right? And if we want to give this a little rotation so we can see what's going on with that, looks pretty good.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, it's not reflecting into itself too much, only like
just
the corners. Yep.
Just at the edges. And most likely we're gonna finesse our way around it, or by the end we've put enough cool stuff on it no one's even gonna notice.
Gonna know. They're not gonna know.
Oh no, Voodoo Val is having other hot takes in the
Oh, pineapple is not pizza friendly. Oh, I don't know. I'm not ready to dive into that conversation. As a Floridian, I would argue pineapple is great on pizza.
It's only the hottest take.
Yeah.
Every time I come on here, there's at least one food problem, and then one discussion of the correct way to say GIF, and then or GIF as I say it. I take the third option. And
as old as time, that one.
But in this case, what we want to do, we want to start getting this thing in motion. We're happy with how it looks. So what do? Draft 3D, right?
Perfect. Okay.
And we might as well, let's put on our transparency grid, right? Because we can now see the full definition of the thing. It's looking good. I think we want just a little bit of sort of bevel situation. So we're going to give ourselves that convex bevel because we get that nice, that gleaming little highlight that comes in there. Beautiful. Love it. that's going to give us a nice bit of definition, a nice little hit when we come around. Beam.
Yes. So it's basically sparkling.
That's right. And when we take this thing later and we apply like glows and stuff to it, that's going to really blow out.
Amplify. Yep. Okay.
So we're going to let's work up some motion. Let's get this thing doing the stuff we want. What are the aspects of this that we want to change? We want to be changing things like its extrusion depth, set a keyframe on that. We want to mess around with its size, most likely. So let's set one on that. We might want to deal with the stroke width. So I'm just going to type in width up here. There we go. Stroke width. Click it on. Well, I guess we could mess with the taper if we wanted to, but no. Let's stay on target.
Let's not get too crazy now.
Hold on. I'm gonna save. If this crashes, that's on me. But I just want to see if we dial into stroke, dial into wave.
Ooh.
Hello.
looks like yes, those little beaded metal ball bracelets.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? It looks like I could just have it on my wrist.
Huh. Interesting.
But it doesn't go full circle. There's like a weird edge where it meets.
Now that's because the wavelength is not a percentage, right?
Got it.
It's a measure. So we would actually need to use a little bit of like pi radians, et cetera, to get this exactly how we want it, which I do not want to do. But if we were to dial it in correctly, you can undulate the wave around the thing. Anyway, if people have not tried all of the interesting stroke options, we can also do tapers. So we can come into the taper and sort of have a taper that goes around kind of like this. So you can see that we've now kind of made a little bit of a bent.
A little more wonky.
Yeah. So anyway, interesting stuff available for those who want to delve into that. Let's keep it. I mean, and I know it's ocean time here, but we're gonna
go back to just standard.
Exactly. We're gonna keep it flat. We're gonna keep it rigid. And so I think those are the properties I was interested in, right? So if I tap U to bring up the keyframes, and we've got like the size, which will govern, largeness and smallness of donut, and we can collapse it. We can collapse it all the way until it looks like just a little pebble, a little nubbin, and we can collapse this down. So that's pretty good.
I love how some of these are so self-explanatory, but we still don't know what metal means. So
it's how metal it is.
Yeah. Right now, it feels like we're at peace. We know exactly what the ones that you have displayed are, and that's all we're going to worry about.
Yeah. Now, when we want to think about rotation, I'm going to zero out the rotation on this, and I want sort of two kind of ways to control rotation. We have orientation and rotation of the object itself, which is okay. That's fine. But I would also like to make a new null. I'm going to make that 3D, and I'm going to parent this to that. Now, if I may explain myself, the reason I like to do this is because rotation can become confusing. And if I want this thing to be doing stuff like orbiting around something or away from something, this is one of the easier ways to do it. That if I just move this thing on the Z axis now from what we would consider to be the origin, right? Position 0, 0, 0 is the middle center of this space. Before it wasn't. So when it's not parented, it's 540, 540, 0. That's its home. That's its address. You want to send a letter, send it there. But when I parent it to the null, which lives at the same place, then its location is now, it describes itself as 0, 0, 0. So if I were to move this thing sort of forward and away, let's move it, negative 600, which will move it towards us. And then I were to orbit this thing around. You know what? 600 is too much. Let's bring it back in. Whoa,
so we can see what's going on here.
Yeah, let's rein that in here. So let's say we move this to like negative 300. It's a lot easier for us to do like an orbiting around of the scene with this. Otherwise, we would have to sort of move the anchor point and stuff, and that gets really wonky. So give yourself another locus of control out there in the world that will help us move this thing around.
Help us help you help yourself.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, so we're gonna toggle on a bunch of rotating here for the what we're gonna call this the orbit control. And then this one here, I guess we'll call the ring 1, because we'll probably do multiples of this. And we just need to work our plan. That was the ring expands from a circle. It's going to tilt and turn, and then it's going to write itself off.
Okay.
So
I'm prepared and ready to get into it.
This may go faster than anticipated. So we're gonna start us off at a pretty decent size here. So maybe something like this, and then we're gonna bring the stroke up to complement like that. So now it is formed kind of this perfect thing.
Okay.
We also might want to do something with scale on here. So I fibbed a little bit. I think we're gonna pull up scale as well to do something. So we want to telegraph our move, and so this is gonna be we're gonna be going a little bit deep on keyframes here. So telegraph the move by pinching, pinch. So we're gonna pinch in before we expand out. So then we might return this outward, but at the same time, we are going to be increasing the size of this thing. So it's going to go out like this. And we probably want to think about the conservation of mass. So if that is getting bigger, let's thin it thusly like that. And all of this is happening within 20 frames. So that's okay.
Beautiful.
So far, so good, right?
Yes.
Now, let's go ahead and drag these two out a little bit so that they get a little bit of drift out of them. We're going to ease all of them. Let's ease the whole lot of it. So kind of like that. And now we're going to enter into the graph editor. Welcome to Graph Zone. Yeah, things are cool in here. We can look at a value graph or a speed graph. Let's kick it to the speed graph for now, which can be a little bit less intimidating for some folks to get in there. And we are going to keep in mind that we're dealing with the size of this thing. We want this to feel a little bit explosive, so we're going to pull the handle. So that feels a little bit more explosive like that. And maybe we want to pinch, give it a pinch like this so that it's a little bit more.
Yes, it's so much easier to kind of adjust those controls here in the graph than it is to be manually keyframing all of those like little moments.
This is an intimidating space, right? Because we're abstracting value.
Yeah.
But I assure you, good listener, this is the place. This is the cool kids table. You want to be hanging here, because. So let's come into this other graph here now. The eyeball. I know this is getting a little bit teachy, but we can show sort of more properties, right? So if I select both of these, you can now see both curves at the same time. And I'm gonna try to pinch the handles so that they're similar or the same, but similar is fine for this. And if I were to say expand this on either side, but still keeping this ridge close to each other, it creates this really nice like complementary kind of feeling to the motion when this kind of goes kind of like that. And we want to think about this like a flow, like how is this thing moving? And we want complementary things to be happening in here.
Just making it look way more natural by making these adjustments on the graph.
Exactly. So we're gonna, for example, pinch in this scale adjustment here as well. And on this first one, we're gonna give this a little bit of a similar pinch like that. So it's gonna go in like that. So already we've made great strides by these few keyframes and just a little bit of work on them like this, right?
How do you know what kind of movement is going to make it look more natural, as opposed to just letting the keyframes, before we got into the graph, it looked solid, but how do you learn when to make those adjustments if you're new to using the graph?
Oh boy, wait right there. I'll be right back.
Is it always, I'm wondering, is it always just pinching it in?
So I've come back with a book. This is the Animator Survival Kit. This is sort of the weighty tome that everyone who takes animation at a college level has to take home with themselves. Those are pretty expensive. But the things that you'll learn in such a book, the basics, the fundamentals of animation, pervade all of motion design. Right? They are sort of one of our foundational elements. Now, one of those is the idea of like solid body and thinking of things that are heavy, and if they're going to get into motion, what is that motion meant to feel like, right? So if something is kind of chonky and we want to show that it is slow to get going, we have to ease into it. We have to take this ramping up to speed. Now, this speed graph tells us that the fastest acceleration is here, and the 0, this baseline here, is no movement at all. If these things are linear, which, by the way, we can really quickly show you that. So right now we've got them all the way we want. We'll Control Z back to this, but
let's see what it looks like otherwise.
This is what it looks like if it's linear. Very rigid, really like robotic, like start stop on things, right? Because it's not coming up to speed. It would be like if you were driving a car and it just suddenly slammed forward, right? Very abrasive, and very abrasive for the viewer, right?
It's a lot easier on the eyes, the option that you adjusted with the graphs. Yeah.
So in terms of how do we know, right? How do we know what it is? I try to avoid anything that is rule Z. You know, even though I am always the DM when I play Dungeons and Dragons, but in this case, we want to do what is appropriate to what we're trying to get this to feel like. So sometimes a really abrupt change is exactly what we want. So for example, if at the start, right, we are at the start here, we're like relaxing down. If we want this to feel like a kick, I'm going to drag this specific graph handle right here, and we're going to drag that forward so that the maximum acceleration is right at the beginning. So if someone were kicking this, it's like it's really getting kicked forward to do that. And we're actually going to complement that by dragging this way smaller, right? We're really going to pinch it down so it's really like sucking in before exploding out. Now that's because we want to get that feeling of a kick at the start. Now, if we want to make it feel a little bit more like it's sort of alive, right? We have this like slow to get started, quick in the middle, slow to finish.
Punch up, yep.
It's a much more pinched feeling, you know? So it's all about feel. A lot of it comes with experience. The more you play around with projects like this and just experiment and have fun with it, right? That's when you gain the sensitivity for that. As opposed to when we're working kind of pose to pose in this for a project, right? We want to kind of have that experience already banked up because that tells us how we're going to get from one thing to another. So we need these two modes of practice in order to develop the sensitivity through play, and also then to apply those skills, those sensitivities that we learn, you know, under pressurized conditions. So those are the two modes that I recommend people think about when they're thinking about their own study and their own practice. But yeah, that got real serious for a bit.
No, I like it because I feel like for you, like you're saying, it's very natural to make these decisions. But if you're new to it, kind of understanding motion and practicing and, you know, all the different examples that you showed helps you understand how to apply it to your next project.
Yeah. And hopefully, you know, this stuff kind of sticks with us, right? Like this is why we sort of do kind of personal projects and stuff like that to build up that muscle memory, to explore spaces that we might not otherwise. So we want to try to play with it. So let's add a little bit of rotation to this, right? We've got moving, but it's not turning, so we don't get to appreciate all of the depth. That's what we're here for.
Didn't even know it's 3D at this angle.
We don't want just deep conversations. We want deep motions. Yeah. So we're gonna let's turn this 45 degrees off axis. So it's kind of, so let's see. It has kind of two beats, right? The pull in. So when we're pulling in, let's go ahead and turn us thusly. So we're gonna turn this way, and then we're going to explode out that way. And let's go to -45 maybe, or yeah, we're going to counter rotate ourselves around like this. And let's just have a look at how that looks. Not too bad, but now we definitely want to get our curves lining up. So we got our speed graphs. Give it a pull. So we're going to find It also
Find
really
that
helps
motion.
to, you really want to make the
sound effects, yeah,
with your mouth. It's mission critical.
That definitely helps guide the graph.
Yeah. So you can see we're getting this kind of wind up, right? Wind,
Yes.
click. Motivated motion, if I can say that, is the thing we are after. So let's go ahead and also let's get in another axis. The more axes you use, the more interesting it feels. So we are going to pivot this -45 off like this. If you line them up, if you line up your shifts like this, right, it's going to feel a little bit robotic. If you offset them from each other, it's going to feel more organic. It's going to feel like it has more going on to it, right? There's uneven forces. Natural. Yeah. And even if it's like just one that happens to carry over a little bit from the other, or it's just a little bit more on one axis than the other, you know, I want this to feel smooth, so that's why I'm doing it this way. If you wanted it to feel more robotic, you would do the opposite. You know, we would line them all up. Tidy. Mm-hmm. Yes, very neat, very tidy, very rigid in its application. So that's kind of the thing. Like when I say purposeful movement, we want to make choices, right? We're making choices about how that comes together. So
I would naturally want to stack everything up together just because I'm thinking I'm being more organized, but it totally makes sense that if you just adjust it a tiny bit, it looks like you're more in a real space because nothing moves perfectly like that.
Yeah, and so this will impact, you know, viewers out there. If you're doing a lot of like character animation, think about how bits of the body lag behind as you move, right? So the shoulder joint, then the elbow, then the hand, right? As a chain of events that are happening. Or conversely, then work it the other way. What happens if the hand moves and then the elbow and then the shoulder, right? So thinking about mechanics in these ways can produce very different feelings of movement. So for example, a snake that's trying to attack something moves head first. The head moves, then the rest of the body follows, right? It's more menacing because that first thing is what's tracking. Whereas if you animated the snake backwards, it would feel like kind of a silly thing because its body is driving the rest of it and the head's flopping around. So this is how we imbue things that are inanimate with character and life. Okay, let us proceed. How are we doing for time on this thing? We've
got another 50 minutes here.
Okay.
55 minutes. So let's get into the weeds here. Plenty of time. And if you're just tuning in, you're watching Evan Abrams creating abstract looping videos using After Effects. So join us. We are doing so much here with the motion graphs and everything. So stick around and tell me, what do you think is next? We've gone over so much at this point.
Yeah. Next, we need to sort of continue our story, right? Because the story is that this part is going to get eaten up, right? It's going to disappear. And then as it's drifting, we want this thing to write off. So we need to apply into this ring. We're going to come into the contents. So if we twirl down into contents, we come over here to add. I don't know if everyone can see that. This is where it's usually a good time to get close to your monitor, where it says add. Click this little arrow here, and we're going to add to this a trim paths. Trimothy Paths has entered the chat. So trim paths allows us to say how much of this path we want. And as you can see, we've now created some of it, right? So we can say this much, that much, a pie. If you wanted to make some cool graphs, you could use this to make a pie chart pretty easily, or a ring chart, which conveys the same amount of information. So we go with our little chart talk with Evan. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keyframe the end going away. So we're just going to yum, 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 yum.
We've got the end result. Okay, perfect.
And it's a little bit static, right? So at the same time, robotic. Yeah, let's get the offset going while we're at it, right? There's a few ways we could make this look kind of kind of interesting. We could rotate at the same time, but we might rotate it in other ways. I'm going to just use this offset to push this thing around like this. So let's push it like negative 120 as it's taking this journey. Now these things I am probably going to line up because they need to sort of happen at the same time, but we get that kind of a chasing its tail, right? And we may wish to start this back here while it still has some juice.
There we go. Yes. That way one movement leads into the next.
And if we might, speaking of things leading into other things, let's take this here and let's go to negative 90 on this. So we're going to come into this and then it's going to disappear right in front of us, right in front of our very eyes.
Yes. And it like meets us.
Kind of like that. Now, at this point, we're going to go back into the graph editor. Graph Editor 2, Revenge of Graph Editor. So at this point, when we zoom in on this particular juncture of this, it is a bit of an unnatural liftoff, right? What has motivated this change in speed right here? So what we might want to do is double click on this and say continuous, meaning locking outgoing to incoming. Now, if we don't check that, here's what'll happen. I'm going to grab this point and we're going to move it up, and oh boy, somehow we've ripped.
All breaks. Yep.
We snapped our graph in half. So strong. So we're going to take this thing and we're going to double click on it. We're going to say continuous lock outgoing and incoming. What we're locking when we say that is the velocity. We're locking the incoming and outgoing velocities together. And now when I drag this point, we drag them together.
Which looks way more like what we want.
Right. So this nice smooth curve coming through, right? The speed does not fluctuate, doesn't have that hard check on the speed. And so now it's a smooth transition.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
So checking that box, the continuous box, was essential. If you don't do that, you'll have a hard time. or we have to like manually make it happen, right? Which is these are computers. Yeah. Why are we doing anything manually? You don't want to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a helpful thing to do. The other thing to do is you might want to check out the value graph, and you can tell that it's a nice smooth transition, right? Because this Bezier handle here coming in and out, the Bezier handles are locked together in this way. So as I waggle
nice and
them,
tidy.
Yeah. If they bend, if they have a break like this, that's when you know, oh boy, the values are having a hard change right here. Yep. And so we run that through. Oh, that's a nice.
Satisfying.
Satisfying loops right here. So we're going to play this back, and then it goes, right? So let's say
crosses into another dimension. That's what it feels like.
Oh, good. So
fourth dimension.
Let's see, should we do maybe a little conservation of mass on this thing as it's going? So thinking about the properties that we are manipulating, it's the extrusion depth that we are interested in as it sort of comes apart here, as it's coming apart and rotating around. Let's get that depth to be a little bit thicker like this as it goes. So we're going to see how that feels as it gets bigger and just kind of goes away in front of our eyes, kind of like that. All right.
It definitely feels like it's coming towards us more that way, even though it's like an illusion.
Well, why don't we enhance that illusion, right? Why don't we actually use our position to drive it, either forward or backwards or at us in some way. So let's just grab the position here as it's coming around and doing this. We'll just push it kind of at the camera a little bit, and we don't want it to be too crazy, but that's moving it kind of at us.
Not too jump scary, but
that's right. It's like those movies that are in 4D where they spray you with water.
That's how I feel, yeah. And right there it would spray you with water at the end.
Yeah, I've always wanted a movie that sprays me. Nope. Said no one.
I definitely feel like those theaters were like, it felt like they were popping up everywhere, and then suddenly they were all gone at once. Yeah.
People are like, oh, no. Forget it. We made a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So that's kind of, I'm now using the rotation of this null here to just kind of get this to come back into a little bit like the middle center for us. So that's why we have all of these different ways of influencing stuff, right? Which is fantastic. That is
manipulating stuff, creating your own world here.
We are like gods to them.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you're just playing God here with this O, essentially, this O ring.
And we've got one good one, right? So let's just say we've nailed it. We got one good one. It looks great. Flawless execution, right?
Beautiful.
I'm going to hit save. And then we are going to duplicate it to make a second one. And I'm just going to pull it ahead in time. And we're going to see here, this one goes, and then this one is going to kind of show up. Okay. So.
Oh, okay. They're just stacked on top of each other.
Just showing up and bouncing around. And so this might be something to think about. But what we want is a loop, right? So if we're thinking about how this thing is going to kind of come together, we don't ever want it to like totally leave. I don't think, not in my mind anyway. So I think what we'll do is, as it's kind of collapsing, let's bring it bounce
back up. It revives. It comes back from the dead.
either it's going to come back, or we roll it through in some way so that it's like going to kind of connect for us, because we have to return to this particular frame, right? However we get there, no one's going to judge, but we're going to try our best. Oh, sorry, I've not been diligent in hydrating. Well,
bless you. Even though I know that wasn't a sneeze.
That's okay. It's good to be blessed.
Yes.
So we are going to just really quickly save, come out of draft 3D mode, and we're just going to observe what this looks like.
We're back in full color here.
Yeah, just before we move on, because we want to check our work. We're going to hit N to set our work area here and observe this thing, kind of how it looks, how it's shining, how we're feeling about how the thing is moving.
If it feels natural or not. I'm feeling great about this work here. There we go. Now playing back in real time.
Yeah, and that's doing it for me.
It's gorgeous.
So, thank you. This is my child, after all. So we're going to take the end property here, and we're going to bounce that kind of back up to 100, right? And if that happens, how are we going to get there? How are we going to complement the movement of bringing this thing back around? Let's keep kind of dragging this thing. Let's see.
Because we're trying to get it back to the shape of basically like a puck.
Exactly. So we're going to take our position. I think position will have to return back to 0. So it's going to come back up like this. We could, let's see. Actually, there's two ways. The easiest way to do a loop, right? If we can have a bit of an aside, easiest way to do a loop is something shows up from nothing and returns to nothing, right?
Yes, just reverse it essentially.
Exactly. So that would preclude that we're coming from a state of emptiness to a state of fullness, back to a state of emptiness. A more advanced loop sort of never leaves the stage, if you want to think about that. So something will take over, something will happen. It'll seem like it goes forever. It's really easy to tell where the seam is if there's a state of nothingness, everything, and then nothingness. Right. So let's see. I'm trying to think. We could do. Yes. Okay. Let's do this instead. Oh, new quick note. I don't know if I want to do that. Oh, I'm still taking
handy.
I'm still getting used to these new keyboard shortcuts.
All these new gestures.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you thinking? I mean, I feel like it could continue to loop around, as almost like tease, like it's going to go away and then continue the loop, or reverse in some way.
Yeah. So it's like JK. I wasn't leaving the stage at all.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I'll tell you, we've got time to try to work both kind of ideas. So let's go ahead and give this thing a bit of like compression here. So it's going to feel a little bit like a little bit stronger as it comes in. So it's like it's compressing and then springing. We're going to go back into draft so that we can enjoy the speed.
Oh, yes.
So it's going to come back around. Now we can't yet appreciate the thing coming back around. So we need to flatten this thing out, which would mean, so position, we do want to bring that back down to 0 so we can get it back into where it was. And we are going to kind of rotate this thing. Let's see. Maybe the 2 axes we want to do is, let's continue the rotation this way. So it's going to go to negative 180. And then let's see if we just bring this one back down to 0.
True artistry happening here. You're making all these decisions, trying to get it right where it needs to be. I love seeing like your thought process.
Oh, well, thank you. It's nice when people compliment my mind for a change. So so here's a little thing right out of the Richard K. Williams book, right? That we never kind of stop in this space, right? So, but what we're going to do is just going to add a few frames of like pause. So it's like hurt before it goes. So people can actually appreciate, oh, it did stop, right? And if something is sort of slamming into this space, like sort of hard enough, right? It feels like it's still going, or it feels like there's tension. So the property here is the end kind of state, right? So we do have this little pause before this thing kind of expands back out. So even though it's just a few frames, sometimes that's really all you need before it starts going. Whoop, so then we're away at the races again. And we are going to, let's keep ourselves in the speed graph here, just so we can kind of compare apples to apples as we've been doing. I know it can get a little bit confusing if we
lots of graphs.
Yeah, and I think, let's say that maybe an impediment to sort of learning After Effects sometimes is people's kind of math trauma that they endure during school. I think that
there's just like an aversion to graphs.
Well, yeah, and to things that are very number based, right? Because we sort of bring that fear in with us. I know there's a lot of people that after I take some time and just kind of explain kind of one-on-one what's going on, it, that fear goes away, once we see, oh, you know what, it wasn't that horrifying after all. It's just a language. It's a different type of language to describe these different things. Now, oh, see, we've got this harsh peak here, right? So we want to continuous, lock it out, drag it out, pull the handles, get us to the state of flow. So it comes back around. So there we go. Flow it out. Get the
so
curve
much
going.
Better this way.
And it is the other thing. So giving this handle a much more extreme pull, you can see also helps flatten that.
Nice.
Comes back around like that. So we're going to continually always tapping the save. Yeah, we don't want any more oopsies. No. So as this thing is coming around, let us sort of bring ourselves to the way it was at the beginning, right? So our values that we're going to are like 100 and 100 on those. So let's try to get there. So if we just grab these things here, we'll go 100 and 100, which will get it back to that. But there is quite a gap, right, of time in here. So depending on how that's going, we may just copy and paste these buddies back here, and we'll kind of just see how that kind of goes like that. Let's see. Maybe we should tighten this, pull it out this way, and like that. Now, that doesn't feel particularly good because it's just like it is kind of smoothly doing it, but again, it doesn't feel that great. So doesn't
feel as like intricate as when it revealed itself.
Exactly. So let's go in here. Let's go to a value graph for this. And what happens if we pull the handle up, right? We can pull the handle beyond the line. So if I were to give that handle a pull up, it's giving us that like anticipation, that kick out before it starts going.
A little flare.
So that can be a thing that we might want to think about as this is going to go. So we're telegraphing the move before we do it by showing the inverse movement that we're going to do. That's a little that's a little bit from the big old book of animation.
Yeah, I was gonna say that goes right back to that book that you mentioned.
Yeah, it is. Let's read from chapter 1, verse 12.
Please turn to.
Today's reading comes from. So we're just going to see what's the other value that we need to kind of get under control is the extrusion depth. So that extrusion depth, we're gonna just put a click here, and we're gonna bring ourselves right back to that, and that should be a loop.
Let's see. Nice.
So
soon After Effects is going to have a voice to animation feature, I'm sure, and just your little noises will enable the graph.
That's right. Well, that's the
reactive
dream,
voice. Yeah.
I champion any kind of accessibility tools. So if we can think of any way that someone can use a different one of their human outputs to cause input to a machine, I'm into it. I'm not too wowed.
So interesting.
I'm not too interested in sort of a neural link. I think there's a bit too much space for feedback. I'm not ready for the neurohaptic controls. But I think there are definitely areas that we can kind of get into that could be pretty helpful for people who are otherwise not able to use the mouse and keyboard the way the rest of us may be doing.
I agree. That would be really, really cool, and hopefully it comes out sooner than we expect.
Okay, so we've got this thing going, right? And we've made a loop that takes we're at 401. Hold on, let's make nice round numbers. Let's go. Let's go to 4. So 4, just as a little aside on looping, right? So frame 1 and frame 120 are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So if we were to render this out, if we were to render frames 0 to 120, we would actually have 2 frames that are exactly the same next to each other.
Right.
Not particularly helpful. So what we would do is we would just simply shorten this by 1, and this will produce perfect seamless looping. Find out if I'm lying or not. We're going to come out of draft mode here.
You're never lying. You're never lying.
Yeah, these are all omissions.
That worked great.
Yeah, so we're gonna watch back the render in all of its kind of colorized glory here. Oh, I like that shadow that's coming around the outside. That's looking great. Even the reflection of itself in there is kind of hidden, right? Because there's a little bit of shadow that's
seems
doing
purposeful.
that. Yeah, it feels intentional at this point. So this is looking pretty good. And at this point, I would actually start thinking about, are there other things that could help make this feel a little bit better? So do we want to add into this, if we come into the geometry options, if we do something with the bevel depth, right? That as it's doing something like this, maybe we really give it a bit more of we really fluff it out here with more bevel depth, right? That could be an interesting detail to add. But once you have the core motion down, that's when you want to start thinking about different embellishments in different ways.
Nice.
So
I can't believe it's so simple that you can still change those little like visual moments, even though you have the motion. I would think that it would affect the motion, or you would have to kind of go backwards in some way, but it's really nice that you can just add those effects after you have the motion all sorted.
Well, and it's also the non-destructiveness of After Effects, right? The program is kind of built on this concept of non-destructiveness to the thing. So add a keyframe, take it away, add a property, take it away, put an effect on, turn it off. Like,
it works to your benefit.
Yes, nothing is ever broken. Like very, very unlike say something like Photoshop, right? Where you erase, and if you're far enough down your history, you have to undo to get back to where you were. Whereas we can have little happy accidents and just, let's come into the graph editor and, oh, that's too high, I'll just bring it a little bit lower. Oh, that's too low, I'll make it a little bit higher. Like, I hope that when people come to After Effects, that if by watching this, they can just feel a little bit less afraid to make mistakes in the app and to be more playful in some of their explorations, because it becomes more comfortable that way, when you have the security to be like, oh, even if I foul it up, I'll get back to where I wanted to be. Even if I do 10 oopsies, I'm going to be fine. So,
or you find something new along the way too, because you
Exactly.
found some sort of effect or movement that you didn't think was possible, or you hadn't imagined yourself, and you found your way to it, or it found you.
Yeah, you gotta have these spaces for accidents
Discovery.
to happen. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so something else that I want to do. No fun to just have one. Let's have more. So this loops at 4. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to duplicate them. So now we have ring 2 and orbiter 2.
Okay.
I'm going to offset them in time so that it will kind of begin its journey here, right? And then
Almost
we know
halfway.
Yeah, just about halfway. And I just want to kind of see, as these things kind of overlap each other, how that feels, and do they do any kind of crude intersections? Now, I don't think these geometries are actually hitting each other. I think we're just getting the reflection of one coming into the other. So I think we're actually quite safe. And they don't quite mesh through each other.
No, you'd have to like move it up or down. No.
So because I want something that is going to loop, what I know is that on this one, I know that it's size, right? I need to pinch the size down a little bit, or the scale of it. I need to do one of the two things to try to get them to kind of fit into each other. So this is going to be a little bit of a dance that we're gonna do here.
Let's do it. This is you are so daring to be doing this, right now. You are just gonna live figure out how to make these two things intersect. So you just played with scale on the top one.
That's right. So I'm going to scale ring 2 down, and I'm going to scale ring 1 up. So just during this period where they cross each other. So let's just play that back and see if that is indeed successful. The fewer things I need to, we're going to switch it into draft, right? Because this is definitely
because we don't
motion.
Want any mishaps. Okay. So they intersect. So you're just going to scale that one down even further?
Yeah, I'm going to try to make sure that we can kind of clear. And I think it's all about trying to find where does that occur, right? There we go.
A lot simpler here in the draft 3D.
Yeah. So I think that's lined it up. So if I wanted these things to truly be the same, I need to actually transpose what is here to there, like that. And then I need to transpose what is here to there. And now we'll just put them right back where we got them. And hey, that clears. Nice. I was just about to check and I was like, oh yes, that is going. So
perfect. How satisfying. Pat yourself on the back, Evan. That was really cool. And I feel like you did that so fast. And if you don't watch this tutorial, you would think it would take a long time to sort that out.
Exactly. So the last thing we need to do is sort of return them. We need to return them kind of back to their baseline scale. So let's just make sure that we are doing that. And then of course we'll double check that in case we've made some kind of terrifying oopsies. Oh no, yeah, of course they cut through then. So we're gonna see if we need to leave
This is the dancing portion you were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is gonna be a tough needle to thread on this one. Because they do kind of like chomp right through each other. Another question to kind of bring up though, how does that even look? I haven't even checked to see if that looks weird. So we're gonna take it out of draft mode, and maybe it's actually kind of fine if they hit each other. Because I might be getting crazy.
Maybe just turn the camera a little.
Yeah. We don't have to notice it if it's just going.
Change the angle.
Okay. So the thing that I think we're gonna do. So scale helped solve the first one, right?
Yeah.
Which was great. Love it. Love it when a plan comes together. And on these, though, I think what we're going to do is we are going to pull this one. You know, we can go forward and backward with it. So let's just go ahead and grab a position on this. And we know that it's going to return back to kind of the baseline position potentially. But at this juncture, let's just pull back a little bit like that. We're going to see.
So it almost jumps through each other. Nice.
Okay, that's okay. And so if we take this and we are going to sort of apply it to the position of this, we know that it comes through there.
Okay, it's happening.
We're cutting the corner a little bit on that one. I'm trying to think, because you know what we're doing? We're deviating from that earlier sketch in a big way.
Yes, I know. We definitely are.
You know what I'm gonna do?
You're having to problem solve for it, but I feel like it moves so fast that it's almost it's not very noticeable to me that they touch, but
that's true.
It's not as satisfying to know.
Yeah. What I was gonna do with these basically is to sort of just loop them kind of forward and backward so that we have kind of two things that will leapfrog each other. Because it's 4 seconds and 2 seconds, that means that one is bisecting the time of the other. So what we could do, if I just destroy that one, call up everything that is kind of done about this, and we're just gonna like copy it all, come here, and
I'm watching very carefully here. Okay, duplicating it.
Copying, pasting. So we get it to basically run through twice, right? And then we are simply going to kind of duplicate this, and we might even run it through kind of 3 times. But if we then kind of take this and we are going to offset it, you know, to the middle of this, and then if we only take the middle section, this should actually loop pretty well.
Okay, it's looking good.
So what we've done, right, we've got 2 things that loop at 4 seconds. So all we're really doing is kind of sliding them through each other. And it looks like a lot of complicated sheet music, right? So let's uncomplicate our music by selecting the layer and placing a marker when the loop occurs, because that is the important moment, right, that we want to sort of look out for. Now, if you have loops that maybe have other kind of interactions with each other and stuff like that, you'll probably want to mark that out as well. But these markers, now I can collapse everything. We don't have to look at all that information. And I know that if I were to slide this marker from 4 to 2, I've now done that bisecting of time that we were looking for.
Nice.
Oh yeah, and that kind of coin flip at the end was not intentional. I just happened to copy and paste, and we got this little happy oopsie that happened, right?
It looks really cool and intentional.
Yeah. That's, you know what? Dancing is the right way to think about it. When I do salsa dance, it's the same thing. Lots of really unintentional coolness from me. All right. So this is looking good, right? And if we turn off Draft 3D, you know, this is obviously looking
I was waiting for this moment.
Right. And we're just going to have a peruse. We might, let's just make this kind of render. Of course, this is
this is a classic moment here.
But don't worry, it's warned us that if we go 1 1 1 1, it's saved a backup for us. So that's going to be good. And we are going to just need to
give it a second there, probably.
Yeah, I need to do a little force quit, just like we did before. Not a big deal.
Simple. You can start a note if you want.
I'll make a note of this moment in my diary. But keep in mind, right, that we're working on features that are fairly new. We are working on hardware that is very new, and we're really flexing it with all these reflections and stuff. We're asking a mighty lift from the machine.
And it's very robust. Yeah.
So we're going to see. Also, I was being negligent and I was purging no caches while we were working. So I'm out here flying by the seat of my pants.
Keep that in mind, guys. Yeah.
I'm out here getting crazy with the stuff.
It's a wild day here on Adobe Live.
So I'm trying to think. The reflections and refractions kind of, or no refractions. There's no refractions in here. Don't get scared. I
did. I was getting very scared.
That would really bake some potatoes if we had refractions in natively in After Effects. That would be crazy. The bending of light, I don't think so. So linear light, please. So we've got this thing going. I'm actually pretty happy with how it looks. It's fairly chaotic, or chaotic enough that it kind of hides some of the edges.
I agree.
There is one little thing that I want to do with this that may help play into, just to get a little bit more visual interest.
Mm-hmm.
If we rotate our environment completely all the way around.
So that it's a little less, I think it was like mostly pink, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens if I just give the environment a spin here. So let's see, let's go to 180 on the environment as we kind of roll through with this. And we're going to just see kind of how that looks, that it's going to be just subtly kind of changing as the entire animation goes through, but it could be a nice way, just so that by the end of it, right, we start here like this, and then we end here and you see pink is on top now, right?
Yeah.
So what we would probably want to do to kind of complete, just to be able to complete that, is we need basically another section. We need to go all the way to 8 on this. So we're going to copy this and move forward from here, I believe. So we're copying what's in between the gates like this.
Okay.
And we're going to, I don't want to make an oopsie, because I know we got 2 keyframes that are pretty close to each other over there. So we're going to see if
we're on the edge of our seats here.
Yeah. So copying and pasting. So that's gonna push this forward, but we're gonna have until the 8 right there. Now I could be using expressions to make this thing happen, but I think we've thrown enough concepts forward. Yeah,
we'll hold that one back for now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're gonna go back into draft, and we're just gonna kind of see. Oh, it didn't like. Oh, too many triangles. Don't tell me about the triangles. Oh, you know what we're gonna do? Oh, triangles are very thin, very thin. Okay. So I wonder why I wasn't throwing up about the triangles before.
It was perfectly fine with the triangles earlier.
Okay, I know what's happened. There is a point. So when it's talking about triangles too thin, it is because something is sort of compressed down to nothing. And just before it becomes nothing, I think is what's happening here. I believe that's what's going on. Do either of these kind of totally disappear? Get some solid.
The ring, right? You're talking about the ring.
Yeah. So where our path gets totally trimmed out,
right there.
Does it actually go? And is there? All right. Let's see if we can find.
There's so much to look at, guys.
It's too many.
I'm like, which one are you talking about?
Yeah. So what I'm looking at is, okay. So I think it beefed it here, maybe. Oh, interesting. Oh no, now it's thrown it up.
Now it's all over the place.
Okay, we're gonna go purge all memory and disk cache. Let's see if this is gonna solve our woes.
Let's see if that does the trick.
Oh, and woes indeed. 88.3. Tisk. We may not be able to kind of preview the final thing, because I know we are kind of coming in a little bit tight for time today.
We've got about 20 minutes, maybe a little under.
Yeah, because I wanted to take us into kind of the finishing of this as well. So
what if we just do one ring as opposed to 2? Do you think that will
maybe
help
we could pare back. Oh, but it looks so nice with 2.
I know, I totally agree with you.
It would definitely give us kind of fewer things to kind of worry about. And let's see here. You know what? It may actually be where the geometry is intersecting each other that is causing these 2 tiny triangles.
Yeah.
That's just one of the fun things about geometry, that it doesn't look like it, but this is made of a million billion triangles. Yes. No, not a million billion triangles, but a fair number, because this is a very smooth surface, right? Like, not to toot my own horn here, but this is a very smooth surface on this thing.
It's silky.
you know what? We'll toot the After Effects team's horn here, because it really is an impressive result from something that is not natively sort of three-dimensional, right?
I would totally agree with you on that.
And
you made it look very easy to make. I mean, I know that they was giving us the triangle error, but that's just because we were getting really crazy with it too.
Yeah, you know, if we were more reasonable in our expectations, would have been no trouble.
Exactly. Or if we had stuck to our original sketch.
That's true. You know what? Stick with the plan,
that's on
folks.
Me, I think.
when there's a plan, stick to it.
Stick to it.
So what I want to do is just come in here. This scaling keyframe in here is sort of pushing us sort of at the edge of the composition. So I'm going to come into our value graph, and we are going to grab these two things, or yeah, we'll just grab them. Well, so there are these fun ways that you can manipulate a lot of things at once using this bounding box. And as you can see, I can just kind of bring this down to be a little bit more in line with what we want, and being able to manipulate them both at the same time really makes it nice and simple to kind of fix up all of these things kind of at the same time. So I highly recommend, if you're in the graph editor, turning on the bounding box situation. You can make really interesting kind of gross edits. Not gross as in ew, but gross as in large changes.
And while we're here, if anyone has any additional questions for Evan here in the last bit of our stream, be sure to drop them in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're joining us on Behance. Drop your questions in the chat, bring them over, and we'll get them answered before we're done here. But Evan, this is looking amazing. What other edits are you going to make? I'm sure there's stuff that I'm not even seeing that you're ready to edit.
That's true. We're far from done right now. It looks great, but it's not like ready for prime time yet. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this thing that we've created. We are going to move our playhead here to the end, make sure nothing is selected, and tap the asterisk key, which has now placed a marker on the composition itself, right? Okay. So now we're going to take, for real this time, exclamation point, and drop it into its own composition, which I'm going to call for real. That this naming convention probably very helpful for people, but this is now going to be treated just like a footage element, right? This is just footage. Now, depending on where we're going to be rendering this to, right, we need to be kind of aware of how much of this we need. So how about we go ahead, right click on this, enable time remapping, and time remapping will now allow us to loop this particular footage element right here within After Effects. So I'm going to set a keyframe here at the marker, because 8 seconds is right when the loop transpires. Yeah. So we are going to then move to the end where the default keyframe has been placed in, remove that. So now we have only what's between these keyframes for us. And now there is an expression, our second expression of the day, right? But this one's an easy one. LOOP, capital OUT, enter or return, will bring us. Actually, no, it's definitely the enter key. And now we are going to literally cycle this value on and on and on. So now this thing's just going to loop endlessly.
Nice.
Now, because I like to kind of do as advertised, right? We are going to kind of take this looping element, and sort of as it loops at this juncture, we're going to scale it down a little bit. So let's scale it down. Let's go divide it by 3. And so it's going to get smaller. And we're going to just fill the screen with these things. We're going to use the motion tile is nice and light. Now, when I say motion tile is light, what I mean is it's light on our system. And speaking of, I'm actually going to take us down to 8 bits per channel. Just save us a little bit of rendering trouble. Bits per channel, for those of you who would like to know, and for those who have no choice but to hear this, is the number of colors literally per channel. So at 8, that's like there's 8 options per channel. 16 is double, 32 double that. It is the color fidelity of our project. So bringing it down to 8, we are literally using half as many colors.
Which is going to be a lot simpler here as we preview.
Yeah, and especially because the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to use motion tile to increase the width and height of this. So now we have a big array of them happening.
This is so cool. I feel like that's a a really cool effect that under, what is it? Stylized motion tile right there on the right.
Yeah. And it's motion tile originally. Its sort of function is for just extending footage that may sort of kind of bump into stuff, or like, oh, we shrink it and now we can see the edges. So motion tile would be like, we've got a matte painting in the background. Let's just extend it a little bit and mirror the edges, and no one will notice that we've just zoomed in a little bit, right? I think of it as that type of a thing. But in this case, we're going to use it to kind of do a little bit of a zoom out, and so that we can have like a big array of these that will hopefully look a little bit more impressive than just the lone one.
Yes.
Right. And
that looks so cool.
Yeah, and if we want to do it at the 8s, so if we want to do 8, or maybe we do it at the 4, because the 4 is kind of a natural looping point as well, right? So we're going to go down at 4, and now let's copy and paste, and we're just going to double click on these to change their values. So 100 divided by 3 is where we were at, which would be 33. And then this one, we're going to bump this down to like 20%, which means, well, logically, we actually need this many. So we're going to go like that. And what would be the breakpoint? The breakpoint would be 12, where we are going to copy and paste. Actually, we're at 1201. Let's be exact. So we're gonna go in like this. And instead of going that way, what we're going to do is we're going to change these values to go from 20. And then I'm just double clicking the keyframe to modify their values. The reason I'm doing it that way is because that will preserve what the handles are like inside, and it'll just bring us all the way back to where we wanted to be here, which will then, I believe, loop us out. Let's see, loop us out at 16, which will be here, and 16 minus 1 would be here.
So you don't have that double frame.
Exactly. We don't want them. No nasty double frames for us, please. And we're going to just see here.
Let that render.
Yeah. And
I do like what I see so far.
Yeah, if there are any quandaries that are coming in.
We have this question from Rob, which might lead us to the next phase, which is, how do you export this, and what uses can various exports give you? I know it's a lofty question here, but
so when we're exporting anything out of After Effects, we are probably going to be jumping into either the render queue or the media encoder. I tend to think of the render queue as the thing that I will use if this is an internal facing file, meaning it's going to be going over to Premiere to be inserted into something. It's going to be moved. It's going to be used inside of something else, right? So I still need to keep it very raw, high fidelity, probably big file. So using the lossless or high quality presets coming out of here to hold on to all those bits. If we are sending it to the public, as we will be doing today, what we want to be doing is taking it to the media encoder, where you'll find formats like .mp4 and .gif or GIF or GIF, the graphics interchange, etc. So we can send it to media encoder and say, hey, send out an animated GIF. We can actually now, media encoder has transparent background. So when we're talking about what are the uses we would use this for, there's a lot of things. So because we have the power of looping and transparent backgrounds, you could use this as streaming graphics. You could use this in an HTML5 context. You could use this just as a big repeated background on a website. Usually when this kind of thing is coming into my inbox, it's because we need interesting kind of scroll stopping graphics to interrupt people and give them some ad messaging with some playful stuff in the background. And as you can see, it didn't take us too much to create. I mean, look, we were here for 90 minutes, but it was me talking for a lot of it. So
I feel like you would work a lot faster if you weren't having to show us a step by step.
I was thinking, like, it actually goes quite a lot faster than it seems on the stream. But really, that's not true, because I'd end up using a lot of that time to experiment and kind of try other things, right?
Like the ring that we nixed because it wasn't behaving for us, but you could spend an infinite amount of time, I'm sure, tweaking that.
Yeah, 10 out of 10, I would get lost down that rabbit hole.
Yes.
So those are kind of the uses that we sort of end into. But a few little details how we're going to bring this thing over the line, right?
This looks amazing. I'm loving it. I feel like the tile effect really added so much more interest.
Yeah.
And it was pretty simple compared to what you were attempting earlier.
Yeah. Well, all effects-based things are going to be, predominantly simpler than non-effects-based things, right, usually. So I'm going to put a black solid in behind, and on that black solid, I'm going to put a ramp, a little gradient ramp like this.
Whoa.
Now, what I want is to sample some colors from our beautiful creation here. So we're going to go from the mid-tone here and maybe something from the darker extreme. So we end up with this, kind of mauvey thing here. And we're going to blend with the original quite a bit so that it kind of blends out like that. But just so we have like some heat at the top, coolness at the bottom maybe. And that's a little bit of visual interest for us, right?
Yeah, but still maintaining enough contrast to have the graphics pop out from the background.
Yeah. Speaking of pop, let's duplicate this thing. And now we've got two of them, right? That are behaving exactly the same way. And what I'm going to do is for the one underneath, we are going to use a little Gauss blur in behind.
Just a heads up, Evan, we've got about 4 minutes left on the stream here.
Okay.
Before we have to start heading out, but this is looking amazing.
Excellent. So check this out. We're gonna blur out the background of this one. So what is that doing? It's causing like this little glow to come in right in behind, right? Now we may, what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to go a different direction with this background. Instead of blending with original that way, I'm actually going to bring the total opacity of this down.
Okay.
We'll probably slip another thing kind of in behind. I just want a little bit less of it there. And with what this is like a what do you call it, like a false glow kind of, because it's a glow that only rides behind the layer and is really controlled by the Gauss blur. And the reason I'm using the Gauss blur instead of like the glow operator is just that the math that causes the spread of things is different for both of those. And this, I find, produces what I'm truly after, especially when it comes to, say, switching this to add, and then we're going to maybe add like a curves to this to really dial in the kind of the highlight and get a little bit more color kind of coming into it there. So this is getting exactly where I'm looking for it. So we're gonna put one that's that lives behind. I'm gonna duplicate another one, put it over top, and see how it starts to really pop the highlights when we get it above.
I see that, and I feel like you also kind of push the colors a little bit too.
Exactly. So this is because we're set to add, we're supplying different types of like combination of colors when they come onto each other. So we could switch it from add to like screen, and you see screen is a more subtle, a subtler thing. But look, we're not creating abstract loops of infinite rings to be subtle out here. Okay.
Yeah. No.
So with all that said, I think we're looking pretty good. I think the only thing left to do, I think I might increase kind of the saturation point of our...
Ooh, I think we're getting into like this vaporwave aesthetic that Val had mentioned earlier in the chat. I feel like this is looking really cool.
All right, we save our work. We hit render. We're craving the wave. And now
the blur looks amazing as it goes through the loop.
Yeah, pretty good, eh?
Yes.
The only thing that we want to kind of be careful of with these sort of blurs is when we kind of interact with the kind of edges of the composition. But I think I've got repeat edge pixels on. I don't remember. I'm really enjoying how the glow is really heating up when we get these flashes kind of in front of the
it's almost
cameras.
like a flare.
Yeah, the light's bouncing. Now, if you wanted to kind of go that extra mile, we might use like third-party plugins, like some deep glow. We might use some sort of compounded glows. We might even come in here with like maybe some lens flare stuff, but I'm pretty happy with how it's coming together.
Amazing, Evan. I feel like pretty happy is an understatement. This looks really cool. There's so much happening. You walked us through that so efficiently, even with time spent trying to figure out some other directions to go with the motion. I feel like you really showed us every single step and thoroughly explained kind of like the thinking behind a lot of the motion, the thinking behind the environments that you mentioned. So this has been incredible. Can you give us maybe a little recap of everything we learned here today with you?
Oh, yes, indeed. So we started from the beautiful notebook. Oh, wait, that's not going to show up on camera, but don't worry.
In the replay, you can go back and watch it.
That's right. But I've got a scan of it. We got a scan of it. So
we go.
We started with this really rough idea. And from there, we started to explore. And in fact, we've actually got it in here. We've got the testing ground where we can see we worked up the style of this thing using an environmental layer that's really doing all the lifting, right? This is doing the heavy lifting in here for us. And we worked up the materials, we worked up the geometry, we rigged up a couple of little expressions to make things work, and then we just really went to town with a lot of keyframes, right? It's a lot of time spent in the graph editor. So if we work our process back, pressing tab to bring up our little map, we can we can sort of go backwards and we can see exactly. I'm going to tap U to bring up all the keyframes, all of the beautiful work.
Check it out. That's all the hard work you did today on this stream, and everyone watched along.
Yeah, let's get even freakier when we go into the graph editor. Behold, madness.
Oh my gosh, madness. But it was, you simplified it and you showed us every step of the way exactly what we were up to. And I feel like you really made this not intimidating, and it could have been a very intimidating stream if you've never created 3D effects in After Effects. So
absolutely. And I think it's really just about getting in there and getting little wins. If you're intimidated by the program, just kind of scale back. We want to build up successive little wins, and then eventually it all starts to fall into place. The important thing to remember is, over 15 years ago, I was a new person coming to this as well. You can do it. If today's day one,
yes,
the journey starts now.
Exactly. You can create this magic. I want to thank everyone who watched this stream. Thank you, Evan, for sharing your knowledge with us, and stay tuned for the XD Creative Challenge with Howard Pinsky immediately following this stream. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.